Good morning, Frieden and friends of Frieden. Our gospel lesson today comes from the 13th chapter of Mark, the last, about 10 or 12 verses, something like that, starting in 13:24 through 37, I think. So do the math. As always, I remind you the best way to understand a story in the Gospels is to read the entire Gospel, certainly. But if you don't feel like you have time for that, read the chapter at least. And so to understand these, chapter 13 is some tough teaching, some pretty harsh words in here. And to understand these, that it really helps to understand the original hearers of this. So we start out, as I usually do, with the cultural perspective of the original audience. And so if we just go back and start with the opening words of chapter 13, we'll find it says this: as Jesus was leaving the temple. Just that right there, as Jesus was leaving the temple, says just oceans to the original hearers, because remember, the temple was the center of everything. It was not only religion, it was government, it was litigation, it was commerce, it was the center of everything. It was social, it was the center of everything. It was where you felt in touch with your heritage and with your neighbor and all these things. And Jesus had been at the temple and had been teaching and being tested and tricked and badgered and threatened, and had had a very intense experience at the temple. And so when it says, as Jesus was leaving the temple, in my mind, with that context, I think Jesus is, how is Jesus walking as Jesus leaves the temple? He walked out of the temple. Was he like kind of skipping, happy? Wow, that was a lot of fun. Can hardly wait to go back. Or was he, was he kind of dragging his feet of, man, that was a long deal in there. Wow. Or was he stomping out? Was he like, man, those guys, I like to bang somebody's head on something? I think that's what he was doing. I think Jesus was harumping out of the temple. And so he gets out of the temple and just stops for a minute. He gets out of the incense smoke and the smell of the sacrifices and the whole hubbub of just being inside the temple, and gets out into fresh air and daylight, and just kind of stops and goes, wow, that was a long day. Kind of loosen up, getting that, how you have a tough meeting like that, and that you walk out with like your shoulders kind of hunched up. And so he stops and does that, and then one of his followers comes up. This is somebody who has maybe latched onto Jesus since he arrived in Jerusalem and is all really excited about everything and wants to make a contribution to all these really cool conversations. And he says, look, teacher, how beautiful the buildings are, how big the stones are. So his followers are impressed because of the building. And I mean, that sounds silly when you say it that way, but how many of us that's our church experience, that we get caught up in worshiping our building? It's one thing to be a good steward of your property. It's another thing to be willing to battle a brother or sister over the color of the carpet or the length of the drapes. I've seen that happen. So Jesus says to this guy, I mean, I really see Jesus when this guy says, look, teacher, look, it's so beautiful, but look how big those rocks are, and that's not how they get to this. Jesus just goes, I mean, there's a guy that is wants to get it. I mean, he says, yeah, he's following Jesus. And Jesus says to him, do you see all these great buildings? Ground. I mean, there's more to the temple complex than just the temple. There's all this other stuff. He says, do you see all these great buildings? He says, not one stone will be left on another. Every stone will be thrown down to the ground. I mean, chapter 13 is a chapter where Jesus talks about that you will families will be torn apart by trying to understand, trying to make the change to what could be instead of what is. That it's not about the building. It's not. Jesus says, take the long view, not this short view. That the temple was raised in the Jewish revolt of AD 67. The temple was raised. The temple was flattened when Rome put down the revolt of 67. So this, when Jesus says not one stone will be left on top of another, that happened 30 years into the future for those people. And by the time these stories were written down, that Jesus said not one stone will be left on top of another. The temple was torn down by the Romans, and 60 years later that we're remembering when this stuff happened, that nobody would have been alive still that had ever seen the temple standing. Something to think about. All right, so you go all through chapter 13 in this, and it's this hard stuff, and it's like, where's the hope in this? How do we find the hope in this? How do we pry hope out of this? The hope that we talked about earlier today with the article from Feasting on the Word. The hope for the end times, the hope that this will all just be put away. This Jesus coming in power, and Jesus had already come twice. Once in this time that we're coming to this Advent, this warm and fuzzy baby Jesus, swaddling, manger, cattle lowing baby. And then we have the Jesus coming in on Palm Sunday. Also very humble, this Jesus coming in on the colt. This very humbleness, and told the next time Jesus comes, it's going to be louder. And this hope that Jesus will come in full dress uniform and fix it. Fix what is wrong with this world. But in this text, this hope comes from, he says, so be careful. I have warned you about all this before it happens. That's verse 23. That's the one immediately before our scripture for today. So be careful, I have warned you about all this before it happens. Mature people like to, you say, I have good news and I have bad news. They say, give me the bad news, because that's something I'm going to have to prepare for so I can deal with it. Bad things happen, it's okay. And then then give me the good news. Tell me what my tools are to deal with the bad news, kind of stuff. And so Jesus says, even though this is going to be tough, it's going to be tough for everybody. I told you so you wouldn't be surprised at the same time. And so, he goes on with all these powerful signs. And you can see why people predicted the end, because they saw those kind of signs. They saw, the sun darkening and earthquakes and just like we do now. And Jesus does say, pay attention, watch for these things to happen. The earth and the sky will be destroyed, but the words I have said will never be destroyed. There's some hope again. That thing that you can count on, that thing that really is the rock that will not be moved, is that truth that Jesus spoke. So, we take out of this on Advent our hope is that, and I really want to remind us that even though with our current state of pandemic and global warming and all the things that are going on, that the wars, the violence around the world, the violence in our communities, the uncertainty of politics, all those kind of things that may make us feel like, wow, is this the end times? That all generations have had to ask those questions, and so far, that humanity has been able to continue somehow or another to keep perking along. But for us individually, you could certainly look at this and examine the course of your own life as we prepare ourselves for this coming of Jesus. To say this is like preparing the house to decorate for Christmas, this getting preparation, the moving everyday furniture to the garage or the basement or the attic or someplace else to make room for the glory that is Christmas decorations. That moving furniture out of the way is not the fun part. All right? As we prepare this reminder that all of us will go through this, all of us will experience the next coming of Jesus. It may not be with this Jesus coming to rectify the entire world, but for each one of us individually, we will eventually be moving toward Jesus as Jesus is in full dress uniform, and taking us that have not been as good as God imagined us and making it all right and fixing it all. So my hope for Christmas is that Jesus would fix the entire world at once this year, that this would really be the year. But I'm all right if it's not, because there's plenty of work still to do just right here with this one silly follower of Jesus. I could have easily been the guy saying, hey, look at how big the rocks are. I get distracted. So my prayer for us this Advent Sunday is that we pay attention, be alert. Bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.